How many times will you introduce yourself, specifically when you take sessions? While attending interviews, is it necessary to keep speaking about your hobbies and also your language barriers and problems all the time you meet someone on speaking platforms, especially for training sessions? If you're meeting me the first time, my name is Rini Rose Matthew. I'm a CELTIA certified tutor and also an author. Thank you for joining me, and let's get started. By the way, how are you? We have all reached the last month of this year. Whenever I think of the last month of the year, I have anxiety and sometimes fear also, because there are a lot of changes happening around the world. It's not that we notice it now, but it becomes prevalent and predominant. Now, there are a lot of people asking me, this is a particular concern that you have to address. Whenever you meet people, specifically while working on your language skills, is it necessary to keep speaking about yourself, introduce yourself, and at the same time repeat about your hobbies? Of course, for practice sake, it's important. But otherwise, if the session is only for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or even 50 minutes, don't you think that 5 minutes, 10 minutes would just get wasted away? If you're taking an interview, definitely it's important. If you're a part of a particular professional development program, you have to introduce yourself, and that to keep it brief. How to do it is also another question. But every time when you work on your language skills, is it necessary? I know that practice makes it perfect, but should you be doing it every time you meet a particular tutor or a trainer? And if you're not working on interview skills, what then? What next? These could be some of your concerns. The first thing that you have to keep in mind is, it's fine to introduce yourself every time when you get the practice, you make it better. But if you're just going to do it for the sake of doing it by saying your name, your place, and then describing your hobbies, interest, and before that your qualification, then it's not going to bring about any change. I've seen people who do this every time they meet a tutor, not only on speaking platforms, otherwise also, but still they make mistakes. For example, they say, I do mistakes while speaking in English even after taking 100 sessions with a particular tutor or different tutors. So when you give practice to your skills, make sure that your sentences get better. Otherwise, there's no point in introducing yourself every time this happens. I'm shooting outdoors, so you will get exposed to the different sounds of nature and people playing around, children playing around, walking about. Of course, I know that you are able to hear me clearly and it's audible. Now, there are certain things that you have to take note of, specifically when you begin taking sessions. Avoid false accent. I've seen this with different people, especially on YouTube. Remember that social media do not filter everything. There are good content, bad content, something that's misleading also. When it comes to language learning also, I have seen people promoting wrong ways of learning a language. For example, when everything goes viral, even the wrong ways of learning can also go viral. It happens now. And there are people who think that if you just speak with an accent, you get the practice. I mean, when you speak with a false accent, there are chances that you focus too much on the accent, forgetting about the grammar, the syntax, and also the sentence construction. Specifically, if you're working on your language skills, I don't think it's advisable to keep focusing on your accent. You can definitely work on it, whether it's American, Canadian, Australian, or whatever you want to go for, but make sure that your language skills are also good. Otherwise, you use beautiful accent or probably false accent, you fake it, but at the same time you make mistakes with grammar and the sentences and the syntax, then what's the point? Similarly, when you use advanced words in your sentences and when you make mistakes with basic sentences, it's not good. It's not at all right. That's not expected. But before that, you are using high-tech words, but at the same time, if you don't focus on your sentences, the base is still wobbly. The base is still wobbly. Please listen to that carefully. So if you're trying to work on your accent, You know that pronunciation, accent, these are two different things. They are two different aspects on the same plane. Sometimes they work together, integrated, but otherwise you may have to give more importance to one side, and that is pronunciation. Pronunciation is the way you throw sounds, the way you articulate a particular word. So it's not about accent that's specific to a country or a region, but the way you throw sound. So work on that. How do I say wind? It's not wind. Or it's not English but English. The right sound, I hope you get it. So when that's the case, if you're going to just fake the accent and make a lot of mistakes in your sentences with your grammar, and that too redundant mistakes with the same pattern of error, then you have to think about it. And let's not make it viral. Our objective is not to make methods viral, but at the same time it's to help people. So what happens when wrong trends and wrong methods go viral? It becomes subconsciously malevolent. It becomes hazardous to people who are listening. Now, when it comes to self-introduction, I think it's good to introduce yourself every time you meet someone the first time. It's a kind of practice. But if you have limited time in front of you, you can make it brief, because every time you do it, you're giving practice to yourself. I've seen tutors also indulging in history, in what they have been doing all their life. People can make it brief. I mean, what you're doing now, and then not necessary to always elaborate on the qualification, what you did. Specifically coming to hobbies, we all get excited when we speak about our interests. But try to make it brief. And then if the person is really curious and interested, and if you share common interests, you can definitely talk on it and consider speaking on that as a topic. But otherwise, it doesn't serve the purpose if you're just going to elaborate unnecessarily. For example, if you love doing painting or listening to different types of music, you don't have to keep elaborating, describing, and giving every minute detail about it. Make it brief, but at the same time, it's to allow the other person to know more about you, about your interests. That's how you get to know each other. But unnecessary description and elaboration is definitely not required. So I feel it should come from the tutor. When the tutor elaborates and gives the whole story of what the experience is. So as a learner, you have to get the maximum from the session. You can tell it in a very polite way. I love listening to what you have been doing and it's really interesting. But I think we can make it brief because we have very few minutes ahead. And I would like to make it very productive, and I would love to get some guidelines from you as well. So there are different ways in which you can divert the topic, and that too without hurting the intention and the interest of another person. But as tutors, if you're listening to me, please make it brief. It's not because the other person is not interested. You're wasting the learner's time as well. And when it comes to the learners, I see most of them not very comfortable sharing about everything that they do, I mean as hobbies or about their qualification, because they are nervous or they could be anxious as well. But don't take advantage of that space as a tutor and then keep elaborating about everything that you have been doing. I don't think that's advisable. Another point to be taken note of is when you keep elaborating about something that is not under the umbrella of knowledge or information to the learner, maybe the person may not comprehend what you're trying to say. So body language is very important. So if you feel that the person seems to not understand or seems to be a bit disinterested, so go a bit slow, try to make it brief so that people are able to understand, and then before they get bored, you can switch to the next topic. We have transitional words and phrases in English. I think there's a way to transition from one topic to another also in daily life, because it's all about the way you speak. The art of communication is also very important, right? So even during my training sessions and sometimes when I take sessions on speaking platforms, I do the activities. I make the learners also do the activities for most of the time. But now I take training sessions, one-to-one training sessions. It's not enough that I tell them, read, listen, do this, do that. I show them how to do it, because that's when I can call myself a language trainer. Otherwise, I'm not fulfilling my responsibilities and doing justice to my position as a language trainer. What is the difference between a trainer and a teacher? A trainer shows you, if necessary, shows you how to do the activity, and at the same time gives you guidelines on how to go about it after you finish doing the activity successfully. Because different people are from different levels and backgrounds, so it is your responsibility to show them exactly what is expected. So you can ask them, do you have access to books? What types of books do you like reading? And then probably immediately find out a resource if there is an option to share the screen or to show them physically a page from the book that they'll be able to understand. Try to demonstrate the activity, because that's important. Otherwise, people may just feel that they understand. They may pretend to understand certain things, and ultimately they will say, ma'am, I've been trying all these things all my life, but I listen to a lot of content. I am able to understand English. I know everything, but I can't speak. Actually, that is not what is happening. Knowing is not enough. Know means when you say that you know, there are still things that you're not aware about. So when you're a language learner, there is a way in which you can listen and pay attention to the words and sentence construction. Then comes the real issue. How many times should I speak about my communication problems and language problems? See, whenever you approach a tutor, definitely you have to communicate about the problem that you face. But don't waste 15 minutes speaking about your problems and all the things that you feel. Of course, the tutor should also have the power to find out. I would say the power of decisiveness, being decisive in life about analyzing and finding out the real problem. It's good to listen to the learner, and when the learner communicates about the problem, it's like they are also confident that they need help from this particular point, but there could be something else also that you could help with. So if the learner says, ma'am, I'm not able to frame sentences properly. I've been doing all these things and I feel I will not be able to do it because I come from a Hindi medium school or a vernacular medium background. Then there are different ways in which you can find out why the learner is not able to pick up despite listening to different resources and reading a lot of books. So there, when you communicate your problem as a learner, you have to be confident. So when you communicate about the problem, make it brief but at the same time very clear. That is also part of communication skills. If you are not able to communicate about your problem, then definitely there are a lot of platforms and people who take advantage of you and then begin with something that is not even required. You could be thorough with certain aspects, but maybe they'll begin from the beginning and then you may feel, oh my God, I've been doing this all these years and I'm just repeating the same thing whenever I enroll in a particular platform or when I begin my journey with a tutor. The next point is there is a very big difference between being reluctant and being hesitant. So when people say I hesitate while speaking in English, it shows that they have some fear, some anxiety, or maybe just they are intimidated by a particular situation, or it could just be that they're stopping themselves from speaking further. It could be just because of some little bit of fear and anxiety. So I'm becoming hesitant. So as I begin introducing myself, I become hesitant. So refraining, pulling yourself back, you feel the power from within. But reluctance need not be because of fear and anxiety. It could also be because you're pulling yourself back because you know it's not right. For example, I was reluctant to have that food because I knew it was not the right choice for me at that particular time. Reluctant, very sure, but at the same time you pull yourself out, not necessarily because of fear and anxiety. I am reluctant because of this reason. Maybe the reason is not very clear to you at that time, but still you pull yourself away. And that's not because of fear and anxiety or because you feel intimidated all the time. Okay, so these are two different things. There are people who hesitate to speak in English or even while having a conversation in the mother tongue. Even when they face two people together at the same time, there are people who hesitate to speak, to express themselves. Reluctant is also because they draw themselves away, okay, knowingly, and sometimes subconsciously also, purposely, just pulling away. That is also possible. So when you communicate about your problem, you have to be very clear. And there are learners who are both reluctant and hesitant also at the same time. So I wouldn't say it's so dangerous, but it's all about your mind and how well you practice with the right methods. So to conclude, I can say that you can introduce yourself. I mean, even when you're alone, you can work on the way you introduce yourself in front of people, semi-formal meeting, formal meeting, or even an interview. But it's not necessary to keep introducing, especially when you work on your language skills and communication skills, because there time is important, and maybe you can ask questions after doing some homework or just working on yourself. You can ask the tutor or trainer to just check on how you're doing it, about how you have been doing this. You can always say, would you mind checking the way I introduce myself? Is there anything that I have to change about it? That's also one way, but otherwise, how long will you keep communicating your problem without finding a solution? Every time you introduce yourself, then you listen to the story or the self-introduction. It's good to know people, but still you should understand that time is limited. Introduce, make it brief, get to know each other, dive into the topic, learn something from there. So you may feel that I'm just learning how to introduce myself. Okay, that could be a topic for beginners and also for the other levels of learners, but let it not be a pattern where you begin a conversation with that and then keep repeating the same thing, and make it constructive, productive, and also let it have some quality. That's how we learn. Happy learning.